Again, good morning, citizens and friends and neighbors. We are delighted to continue our summit in our efforts to answer Martin Luther King's question, where do we go from here? The question is relevant today as it was when 51 years ago, he raised it. And today, we're privileged to have as a presenter Christian Moore, the founder of an extraordinary organization called WhyTry. And his work has blessed youth and families all across our country. And we're so delighted that he's here with us today. Welcome, Chris. We're looking forward to your taking about 30 minutes or so. And then we'll have an opportunity for discussion, questions, dialogue, etc. Welcome, Chris.
Great, thank you. It's great to be with you today. I really enjoyed Dr. Ford Fisher's words and her advocacy for youth. I thought that was very powerful. I'm very excited about the beloved community and the tremendous work that it's doing and the goals it has to really change the social challenges in this country right now. I'm very, very excited about that. Can I introduce myself a little more? My background is I'm a clinical social worker. Got interested in the work of resilience several years ago when I just started dealing with lots of families and youth dealing with major challenges, major trauma in their lives. A lot of the work I do, we work now in over 25,000 organizations, and over 3.5 million students have been through the work. And a lot of it comes out of my experience with resilience and just trying to help people bounce back. Just to introduce myself a little bit, I grew up in between DC and Baltimore, a family of 12 kids. Both my parents had some mental health issues, and so grew up quite a bit of my life as a street kid, dealing with lots of challenges, and was very blessed to have an African-American woman come into my life and help raise me, and was able to make it through college with a 6th grade math level, a 7th grade reading writing level. I myself was a special education student that struggled tremendously. A lot of kids with my background, the average income for kids with moderate to severe learning disabilities is about $12,000 a year. When I was 28 years old, I had a difficult time even making over $6 an hour, and struggled personally myself. And that personal journey really got me interested in the subject matter of resilience, the ability to take opposition, to take pain and be able to turn it into a fuel source. I'm the author of a book called The Resilient Breakthrough. I spent several years, almost 16 years, flying around this country, actually 3 million miles around this country, teaching social and emotional education to students, helping students get the specific skills to thrive. And quickly we noticed we could teach kids the skills, some of the life skills, social and emotional education, to help them overcome some of their problems. But what we always struggled at was trying to figure out, where does the inner motivation come from to really apply these skills over the lifetime? I could talk to a kid about their decisions having consequences, how to tear off their negative labels, how to control their emotions and their defense mechanisms, how to deal with peer pressure, all these different social skills. But where's the long-term motivation going to come from to really apply those skills we were teaching? And I remember when I was in college, some professor said to me, we'll never be able to figure out a prescription for resilience. What works with one person isn't going to work with another person. And I understand that. But I kept thinking, man, I kept seeing people transcend their challenges. And I kept seeing certain patterns come up over and over. The beginning of my career, I spent most of my time helping kids in crisis overcome their challenges. And in the past few years, I decided I'm going to pay attention to the kids who have tremendous opposition, tremendous challenges. They might be dealing with poverty, their mom's in prison, their dad's maybe an alcoholic. They have these huge challenges, but some of these kids are thriving. And having the unique opportunity to work with over 3 million kids, I had access to thousands of kids who had tremendous opposition, but were able to bounce back. And it's kind of silly when I look back at it now that it took me 16 years to focus on that population, because, as a social worker, of course, my training is to really help the people in crisis. And the high flyers, you know, a lot of times I was just like, I don't need to spend time focused on them. They already have resources and they're going to make it. I didn't really focus too much on them. And then one day it hit me, why don't I take a little bit of time and study kind of these high flyers and figure out what are they accessing that is enabling them to overcome some tremendous opposition. And that's kind of my work with the resilience breakthrough, is trying to break that down, trying to figure out what are they tapping into. One of the first things I noticed that they were tapping into is, because of the challenges, because of whatever the tremendous opposition they were feeling and they were dealing with, they decided to take some of that opposition and use it as a fuel source. I noticed it was almost like a switch they were flipping. They would literally say to themselves, all right, how can I use this pain as a fuel source? You know, one of the key ingredients to being resilient is some type of suffering. Resilience is the ability to bounce back. You have to have you have to have this, you have to be able to find out, where's this motivation going to come from to bounce back. And I use a metaphor of pull it up here. I use a metaphor of a battery that helps them understand kind of what to do with their emotions. One of the challenges we quickly figured out was that the minute you have something to bounce back from, you're going to have frustration, anger, rage, sadness. As soon as that opposition shows up, you know, some of those negative emotions kick in. And we noticed that people who are resilient had the ability to use the negative emotion in a way that could create a productive outcome. When we have opposition in our life, you know, we can still have positive emotions. Of course, we're going to have negative emotions. But what we realized was the ability to tap into both sides of the equation, to be able to use your negative emotions and your positive emotions, can literally give you a resilience advantage. When I'm working with youth, I'll use this metaphor of a battery here, and I'll say, can you charge this battery with just a positive connection? They'll usually say no. And I'll say, can you charge this battery with just a negative connection? They'll say no. And I'll say, what enables the battery to charge is the combination between the positive and the negative, is what enables it to charge. You know, ideally, well, let me pull this up here. Maybe Mark can come back here and pull this back up. Let me see if I can get it to go back. Well, let me see. I don't know where it went here. Let me pull it back up here. Let me see here. Here we go. There we go. Switched it over here to this computer, and it just pulls up a little different here. Let me pull it up. There we go. So, you know, the human condition, we're going to, of course, have these positive emotions right here. Everybody's going to feel different times of life: happiness, motivation, trust, love, optimism. And we're also going to have negative emotions. And in a perfect world, I would want 90% of the children I work with, I'd want their emotions to be positive and maybe 10% to be negative. But I quickly started realizing a lot of youth and families I was working with in crisis, they were going to have, it would be the opposite. Sometimes, you know, 80, 90% of their emotions at times would be negative, and maybe 10 to 20% at times would be positive. I realized if I couldn't show them how to take the negative emotion and create a productive outcome, we would probably only get so far in the change process and the overcoming process. And so today we realize that all emotion is energy. Whether an emotion is positive or negative, it's going to create some energy. And our goal was, can we create a productive outcome, whether the emotion is positive or negative? You know, for example, in my own life, some of the challenges I have with my learning disabilities and some of the challenges I had in my neighborhood, the ability to take some of those emotions and use them as a reason to not give up. I remember Mama Jackson, who helped raise me, sitting down with me and explaining to me, you know, Christian, I can't get rid of your parents' mental illness. I can't get rid of this neighborhood you live in. I can't get rid of some of these challenges you have at school. And I understand why you're angry. I understand why you're frustrated. But you have to be able to take that anger, that frustration, and use it as a reason to turn in your homework, to stay in school, to try to walk away from the gang, the drugs, the fighting and stuff. And I was very blessed to have some people show up in my life early and show me what to do with my negative emotions as much as my positive emotions. And sometimes people think I'm so focused on channeling negative emotions that I overlook the positive emotions. And that's not the case. We emphasize that both of those are equally important. And we want people, of course, to maximize their positive emotions. But in the world of bouncing back, the minute you have opposition, you're going to need to bounce back. And then when you have to bounce back from something, negative emotions are definitely going to be there. They're going to kick in. And so we have to be able to show people how to be able to maximize those positive and negative emotions. And we really believe that's the human condition. A lot of people have been socialized that maybe something's even wrong with them if they have negative emotions. And one of the things we're trying to emphasize to people is to have negative feelings, to have negative emotions is as normal as breathing, as normal as drinking a glass of water. Is the human condition. We don't need to demonize negative emotions. Now, if you're using your negative emotions to hurt yourself and others, that's a problem. And that's where that definitely needs to be checked. I understand that as a therapist. But I saw example after example as I started really studying the human condition of people being able to take their negative emotions and create a productive outcome. You know, Christopher Reeves took being paralyzed. Nelson Mandela took 27 years of being in prison. What Rosa Parks did, channeling that difficulty and making those powerful decisions to sit on the front of the bus. I mean, there's millions of examples of people taking tremendous opposition and creating a productive outcome with Viktor Frankl during the Holocaust. And there's millions and millions of examples of how powerful the human condition is to do that. And so our question was, we understand that concept, but how can we teach that to a child, especially by third grade was our goal, is to be able to show them that they can tap into their positive and negative emotions as early as they can in life. One of the things that we're having a great time right now is we're literally teaching this to kids by third grade, and you'll see kids, the minute they start feeling sad, angry, hurt, they'll say to themselves, all right, how can I use this as a reason to be a better friend, to turn in my homework, to walk away from that fight? And most adults don't see their negative emotions as any type of something they can create a productive outcome with. And it's interesting. We're figuring out it's almost easier to teach children what to do with those negative emotions, how to create a productive outcome, than it is with adults sometimes. Because by the time you're 30 years old, you don't want to see your negative emotions or the challenge in any type of positive light. But a child still has that hope. And what we're excited about, and it's too early yet to see, but we're excited to see over the next 20 years what happens when we show another generation as young as possible how to tap into both their positive and negative emotions. So it's one thing to tell a child that you have this ability to tap into both your positive and negative emotions, but where's the inner motivation going to come from to do that? And so we identified 4 places that resilience comes from, where resilience is born. This ability to bounce back, where does it come from? And when we started studying thousands of people, we noticed we would see 4 things pop up over and over and over again. And when someone bounced back, we noticed they would tap into something called relational resilience, street resilience, resource resilience, and rock bottom resilience. And I just want to highlight these here. The first one is called relational resilience. Pull it up here. This is a picture of my 2 boys, Cooper and Carson. The one on the left there is Cooper. Cooper's personality tends to be extremely positive all the time. And so I'm constantly showing him how to maximize his positive emotions. Carson here, with a little smirk on his face, I think he got my diagnosis when I was diagnosed with ADHD, conduct disorder, severe learning disabilities. And so Carson's a little more like me genetically. So with Carson, I'm constantly showing him how to take his negative emotions and create a productive outcome. To give you a quick example of that, the other day in school, he was exchanging some baseball cards with a kid and punched the kid in the nose. The kid's nose is bleeding. And he comes home from school later that afternoon. He knew I was pretty upset about him getting into this fight. And he walks in the door and he says, Dad, calm down. I already know how I'm going to create a productive outcome. when I exchange baseball cards with my friend in the future, he says, for every one card he gives me, I'm going to give him 2 cards. I've already figured out, how to create this productive outcome. And it blew me out of the water. When I was his age, when I made a mistake or I messed up or I had tremendous anger, negative emotions, it didn't even cross my mind to create a productive outcome with that negative emotion. And what we're excited, again, we're so excited to show children early as possible in life that, one, there's nothing wrong with them if they experience negative emotions, that's the human condition. And 2, they have an opportunity the minute those negative emotions kick in to create a productive outcome. Nobody will get upset with you or hurt you or be frustrated with you if you take negative emotion and create a productive outcome. If you take those same negative emotions and hurt yourself and others, there's a $100 billion industry that will lock you up for the rest of your life. What we're starting to realize today, it's the same emotional state. How early can we teach someone how to use that pain as a fuel source? And so, like I said, with both my kids, I approach them a little bit different. And like I say, if a kid has a lot of positive emotions, I'm going to maximize that. If kids have negative emotions, we're going to show them step by step how to channel them in a productive way. So one of the first ways we do that is we teach them about relational resilience. For example, these are my 2 kids. If I never ever got invited to speak again, I make a living through speaking, I would literally go work at 4 different McDonald's because these 2 kids are dependent upon me. That makes me relational resilience. And so we define relational resilience as this: your greatest motivation to not give up is the knowledge that others need you and you need them, that interdependence. When I'm speaking to an audience, I'll say, if I had everybody in this room, if you could write down 5 or 10 people that you need them, they need you. Most of, 90% of that audience that we speak to in education can write down 5 or more people. I work in over 200 prisons right now, and I'll ask inmates, write down 3 or 4 people that you're completely dependent on them and they need you. And most inmates will write down 1 or less. And what we started realizing was a person's resilience is greatly impacted by that interdependence where they feel that they're part of a team, that someone needs them. And when I woke up this morning, I woke up, I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to probably put in a 16-hour day today. I was on the road yesterday doing a 16, 17-hour day yesterday. And where does that inner motivation come from to do that? Is I'm interacting with so many people who I need them, they need me. That interdependence gives me a massive drive to push forward, to not give up. And that drive can literally be taught. We can teach that to a child before 3rd grade, exactly where that inner motivation is going to come from, to not give up, to not shut down when they're dealing with trauma and tremendous, tremendous opposition. Just highlight this a little bit more here. You draw strength from the emotional support of others. You realize that your greatest power comes from human connection. For me, that relationship was Mama Jackson, who helped raise me. To this day, I'm somewhat dependent on her, and as she's gotten older and I've been able to help her out, that interdependence has been able to go both ways. One of my favorite examples of relational resilience is Dick and Rick Hoyt, who ran in over 240 triathlons together. The father there had gone through a difficult divorce, some challenges in the military. When he became the legs for his son, it completely transformed his life, that interdependence. Harriet Tubman's a powerful example of relational resilience. She was in my Maryland history books growing up, but they didn't tell me the real story about her until I went to her museum the other day, and they explained that, oftentimes the slaves would want to turn around. They would hear the dogs coming towards them in the woods. They would see the lights coming towards them. And Harriet Tubman would be standing with a shotgun, would explain to them, if they turned back around, they were all going to get captured, and she couldn't let them turn back around. And they tended to keep walking with her when she explained to them that they cannot turn around. And she understood at what level they needed her, she needed them. She's also the grandmother of my profession, social work. Jane Addams is the mother of social work, but this is the grandmother of social work. She started the first retirement homes for African Americans in Philadelphia, and her whole life she understood that play of interdependence and how that motivated her and how she could use that to motivate other people. You'll see soldiers coming home from war. They maybe lost an arm, a leg, a limb. Oftentimes they'll say they want to go back. It's not usually because of the political reasons. It's that camaraderie. It's that love for their fellow soldiers. I was talking to an Army officer the other day, and he was explaining to me that in boot camp, they start reinforcing relational resilience as soon as possible because they know it has a huge impact on their motivation. And so it's actually built into the whole boot camp process. And he said it was interesting. He goes, we've never really been able to define it out, to have it laid out this clear. But he says, as I'm listening to you talk about this, he goes, that's literally one of our main goals of boot camp. I thought that was really fascinating to hear that the other day. Because of time, I got to skip a couple of these. One of my favorite examples is Mother Teresa when she goes and gets the Nobel Peace Prize. The night before, they have a huge banquet where they're spending an incredible amount of money on this banquet. She finds out the cost, and she says, I don't want to come to the banquet. You're spending all this money. And she kind of confronts him and says, give me the money. And they give her the money, and she feeds over 300 families for 4 years on the amount of money of an hour-and-a-half banquet. And Mother Teresa definitely understood at what level other people needed her, and she needed them. So what we're excited about is we figured out relational resilience is definitely something we can teach pretty early in life to a child. One way we teach relational resilience to children is we use this metaphor of the geese flying in a V. As the geese get tired, as they're flying, they can fly thousands of miles, and as they get tired, they'll rotate. So the other geese in front of them blocks the wind, and then the next one comes up, and the next geese blocks the wind. If one of the geese goes down, another geese goes down and stays with it until it can get back into the flock. It takes 500-600 miles to catch up. They'll stay with each other, and so it's built in that interdependence, and they're able to fly many miles. They're a highly resilient bird because of this interdependence. And so again, a kindergartner can understand this concept, and like I said, we teach it even to prisoners and to adults throughout the lifespan. And so our goal is that they understand relational resilience, and then we want them to understand something called street resilience. Because both my parents have mental health issues, I've had to really work on my relational resilience. I have something like a lot of kids who grew up in kind of foster care. I have something called reactive attachment disorder. And so for me, relational resilience is not a natural thing. I've had to really throughout my lifetime improve my relational resilience. But I quickly realized I was in what they call the genius range and something called street resilience. And that's where you take disrespect, pull it up here, the definition. You take the pain of disrespect, social inequality, and mistakes, and use it as fuel to propel you forward. So one day it hit me. I had several friends and people I knew that were thriving from a resilient standpoint. They always made good decisions because of their relationship with their kids, their business associates, people in their community. They're highly motivated by relationships. And then I realized I was motivated by the street resilience, the ability to take pain and disrespect. For example, I was told I couldn't go to college because of my learning disabilities, and I used that that disrespect as a fuel source. What hit me one day is if I could teach the people I knew who had relational resilience, if I could teach them street resilience, we might be able to double the resilience. And we got excited about it. We were like, wow, we could even have a university could measure this, because we could look at someone's relational resilience, and then we could see, could we increase their resilience by giving them street resilience, and could we measure it? So we had some pre-tests created. In my back of my book, we have a series of tests, and you can see which of these 4 sources you're strongest in, and then the ones you're not strongest in, you struggle a little more in. Over X amount of time, you can learn the skills to increase that resilience, and then that can literally be documented, can be assessed. So it's not just a theory, it's something tangible where we're able to see if that resilience can be increased. So street resilience, again, you take the pain of disrespect, social inequality, and mistakes, and use it as fuel to propel you forward. Working with literally millions of kids, we started asking kids across this country, what's your biggest challenge in school? And one of the most common answers we got is, I feel disrespected. I just feel like people don't get who I really am. I feel this disrespect. And when I was interviewing kids that were bouncing back, I noticed that they would take that disrespect and they would use it as a powerful, powerful fuel source to not give up. Human beings, we disrespect each other over a million different things. We'll disrespect each other over hair color, skin color, culture, belief system, shoe size, weight. And I was like, wow, people who are resilient tend to use that disrespect. They see that disrespect. They usually won't use that disrespect to hurt another person. They'll use that disrespect. I guess they kind of get their resilience revenge, is they use that disrespect as a reason to work really hard to disprove the haters. This world is always going to have haters, and the ability to use that hate as a reason to become greater is one of the most powerful things I've ever been taught. Again, I had a professor who came to me in college and said, Christian, if you can get a college degree, my degree is worth less. I literally walked home in tears. He saw that I was in college with a 6th grade math level, a 7th grade reading and writing level. And he just thought, this is crazy. Why are you even here? And again, it was the longest walk home. And it's interesting that I just found out this year that professor is going to be teaching out 2 college textbooks. My WhyTry curriculum has made it into the textbooks. It's something called evidence-based RTI, PBIS. And so he actually has to lecture on my theories now. This is the greatest country in the world. And you can say, well, Christian, you're being kind of arrogant or kind of cocky. And I would say, no, I'm not. I'm being street resilient. You told me I'm not even good enough to be on this college campus. I'm going to use that as a fuel source to bounce back. And what we're excited about, you can literally teach a child by 3rd grade that the minute they feel like someone's attacking them emotionally, physically, putting them down, they can literally use that as a reason to bounce back, to become greater. It's interesting, some universities that are looking at relational resilience and street resilience have shared some interesting things with us recently about, for example, street resilience here. A professor at American University and one of my kind of researchers here figured out that when we're talking about street resilience, what we're really talking about from more of an academic standpoint is a person's identity being attacked. When a person's identity is attacked, they tend to want to bounce back. Nobody likes their identity to be attacked. So there's almost a natural thing built in to the human condition. When that identity is attacked, they want to come back. They want to prove to people that that's not okay, to attack a person's identity crosses boundaries that shouldn't be crossed. And there's also a natural inkling to not give up when that happens. But again, we want to have a child learn that as soon as possible. And then you also see the word mistake there. And one thing that we know in the world of resilience is you're much less likely to bounce back if you don't forgive yourself when you make mistakes. The human condition is to make mistakes, to mess up. And when we do that, we have to give ourselves grace. We have to forgive ourselves. It's almost impossible to bounce back if you're beating yourself up. And so that's a big part of it there too. You convert the pain into the energy to create productive outcomes. You direct your hurt and anger towards a cause rather than an individual. For example, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers would be a powerful example of street resilience. You have the ability to reframe your limitations, transform them into strengths. A great example of street resilience is Mandela. We know he was in the prison camp for 27 years. Probably my favorite story about Mandela is the prosecuting attorney that seeked the death penalty against Mandela. Mandela reached out to him and invited him to his house and said, I made mistakes. I'm not the same person. I'm going to create reconciliation here in South Africa. I understand why you seek the death penalty against me. And he just, connected with him and helped him understand that that's not who he was and that he was going to change this world. And when the guy walked out of Mandela's house, the national media was there in South Africa, and they asked him, what do you think of Mandela now? And he said, he's the most saintly man I've ever met. And that was from the prosecuting attorney that was seeking the death penalty against him. And one of the reasons I think that so many people respect Mandela, and I saw the other day, they said his funeral was the most watched funeral in human history, they were saying. And it hit me that I think one of the reasons that took place is because of his street resilience, his ability to take disrespect. He took hate And he said, I'm going to use that as a reason to try to create more love, to bring this reconciliation. And when you look at the work that, Dr. Virgil Woods has done, what Dr. Martin Luther King has done, those are powerful, powerful. That work is street resilience. I really, really believe the ability to take hate, to take disrespect, and become greater because of that. To me, that's outside of love. That's the most powerful principle I've ever learned. The ability to be street resilient is one of the most powerful things on this planet. And when we look at it, has really changed things on this earth. I would argue street resilience has played a major role in some of the biggest changes that have taken place in our culture and our society as a people. And again, we want to get that street resilience to these kids as soon as possible. Rosa Parks refusing to sit on the back of the bus, powerful, powerful example of street resilience. Abraham Lincoln, I went to his presidential library, and you walk down this long, dark hallway when you first walk in, and these political cartoons pop up as you walk down the hallway, and they say ugly, buffoon, ignorant, uneducated. When you get to the end of the hallway, it says this is what his own cabinet called him. And we know Abraham Lincoln, what he did with that disrespect to change American history. Cesar Chavez, what he did for migrant farm workers. And Dolores, his partner, who helped literally change the opportunities for migrant farm workers. Gandhi, Michael Jordan getting cut from the JV basketball team. It goes on and on. One of my favorite examples is Malala, who shot by the Taliban, recently stood up in front of the UN and said, until the man who shot me, until his daughter can receive an education, I'm going to speak out. She used that disrespect in the most powerful way and received the Nobel Peace Prize. And one thing I'll explain to kids is if you look at these people, whether it's Mandela, Dr. King, Malala, they're no different than you. They have two eyes, a nose, a mouth, and I'll keep kind of quiet and say, if you guys want to know what's really special about them, what they did is they all dealt with massive disrespect, and they used that disrespect as a reason to show more kindness, more love. That's one of the most powerful things in this world, is this ability to do that. And the motivation, the inner motivation that comes when a person flips that switch and says, I'm going to use this disrespect as a reason to become greater, is one of the most motivational, most empowering things I've ever seen. I think that we're just getting to a point where we're able to literally teach where that comes from. And I think before we would talk about the philosophy of it, but to be able to teach it in a very clear, concise way where they can internalize it. Give you an example how we do that. I use a metaphor here of pull it up here. I use a metaphor of a truck going down a road here. A big storm comes in, and the truck is stuck in the mud because of this huge rainstorm, and the wheels are spinning. The truck can't go anywhere. It's literally bogged down in the mud. But as you pick up the rocks of disrespect, discrimination, mistakes, pain, and put it in the back of this truck, the wheels, anybody who grows up on a farm knows, those wheels would get traction and be able to go forward. And you can see the light bulb come on in these kids when they go, oh, wow, I can actually take that pain. That pain can be converted into something positive. I can take that pain and create a productive outcome with the pain. And that's really what we emphasize to these kids is, as long as what you're doing is not hurting yourself or others, we support you. And the next level is to do something where you're helping another person. You're doing some type of outward service. You're taking that pain and doing something really positive with it. I had a fourth grade teacher tell me the other day with this picture. She taught it to all of her fourth graders. And the same group of students had been bullying some of these kids since kindergarten. And so when they did the lesson the other day on street resilience, the kids were in the hallway, and two of these boys had been bullying these kids for years, started bullying the kids, and all the other kids kind of looked at the bullies. There's about 12 kids in the hallway. They looked at the two bullies and they're like, bring it, man. You're just giving us street resilience. And the bully, all the power went out of the bullies because the kids actually saw the disrespect as a reason to become greater. So it took all the power away from the bullies. And another program I have, my WhyTry curriculum, we deal with bullying. The purpose of this picture, I wasn't even thinking about bullying, but we're actually creating some curricula right now around bullying with this picture, because we're starting to realize, holy cow, if all the kids in a classroom can see how to use disrespect as a fuel source, the bully has no power, because the power comes from putting that hate out and using that hate to create those negative emotions, which causes, sadness and depression and anger, and manipulates the other kid. And we're already teaching these kids, one, what to do when they feel those negative emotions, and two, how to access street resilience. And so it's a very, very empowering thing for kids. Most adults don't know what to do when they feel disrespected. And again, to be able to teach that to a child by third grade in a language they care about and understand, we're seeing some amazing, amazing things. So the third place that resilience comes from within, where it's born, is something we call resource resiliency. For example, growing up, I had two talents. I could talk nonstop. I could draw really good. I make a living today by speaking nonstop. And when I was a kid, they sent me to the principal's office in Maryland constantly for nonstop speaking, and beat me with a wood paddle. And again, today, I realized my principal should have put the paddle down and explained to me that the number one fear in America is public speaking. He should have celebrated my ability to speak nonstop instead of beating me with a wood paddle. So what was a deficit for a big part of my life, this nonstop talking, at almost 50 years old, I would say is probably one of the greatest gifts I have. It's a resource for me. You recognize that your resilience can be increased by tapping into the resource available to you. Again, I could draw. I was an artist. I could draw and I could talk. So today I make a living through talking, and then I took everything in mental health and made it visual for children. And it's kind of the basis of my organization. And so one thing I tell children is, they're struggling or come from a difficult background like me, is they've got to pick some subject matter they're interested in, some area that they're passionate about, and become an expert in that one area. I've spent tens of thousands of hours studying resilience. I just picked one subject matter and said, I'm going to try to learn more about that subject matter than any subject matter in the world. I'm just going to devote all my time and energy into this one subject matter. And I help kids understand, as they do that and they specialize in that, the world will seek out your information if you can get to a point where you know more about a subject matter than anyone. Now, we all know the more you learn about a subject matter, you learn how little you actually know about it. So now I realize it's got to come full circle. I realize I know almost nothing about resilience, but we're working on that. But we help kids understand that to specialize, especially if you come from a really tough background, tough situation, I see specialization as so, so important. It's one of the only things that can kind of equalize that playing field is to really master one topic in a very, very powerful way that can definitely open up a lot of doors for these kids. And so I tie that into resource resilience a little bit, is that it's like this guy fishing on this river there. He didn't put the river there. He's accessing that river. He has his waders, his fly rod. We tell people they got to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, but we have to give them the laces to pull themselves up with. And that's kind of what I'm focusing on here. When we started studying people who are highly resilient, nobody's resilient in a vacuum. They're accessing multiple resources. They're enabling them to bounce back. You fight resonation with spontaneity. You recognize that your resources include talents, relationships, physical assets, personality traits. I'll just highlight one here. You realize that you have undeveloped talents and untapped capabilities that you can also develop. And one of my favorite examples of resource resilience is Kyle Maynard. Was born with no arms, no legs. He wrestled in high school and college. He recently put rubber balls on the end of his stubs and literally hiked. He crawled to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. He just maximized the reality of where he stood. One of the things I love about resilience is a process. You don't just wake up one day and your problems in the future are gone, or your problems behind you are gone. But all we can do in the world of resilience is just maximize the next 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. We can just maximize the reality of where we're staying. All any of us can do is be as resilient as possible with the amount of money we have in the bank, whether our car's broken down, whether we have a sick child. Resilience isn't an end destination. It's and I believe it transcends success. It's the ability to just do the best you can in the reality of where you're standing in your circumstance. And as we do that, I believe that creates unforeseen doors start to open up when we start to understand resilience and we just maximize the reality of where we're currently standing. You know, with success, we're setting these goals. We have these goals in front of us, and we're thinking, if I can just do A, B, and C, you know, these doors will open up. And I think a lot of kids are dealing with trauma and crisis. They lose motivation because they're thinking, well, if I just do this, this, and this, I'll reach this milestone. I'll overcome this challenge. And I try to tell kids the truth that sometimes all we can do is just keep pushing through where we stand, and you feel like you're making no progress, but that unforeseen door will open up when you just hang in there. Don't shut down. Don't give up. Just keep putting one foot in front of another. And again, this unforeseen can show up. And as I studied Kyle's life and got to know him a little bit, he's a great example of that. He just hit him one day. He's like, the reality is I'm not going to grow legs. I'm not going to grow arms one day. I have to thrive in the reality of where I'm currently at in that moment. And I think we live in such a goal-driven society that people think that certain behaviors will get rid of the challenge. And for many people, I know in my own life, most of my challenges have not gone away. I've had to figure out how to be resilient in the reality of having a 6th grade math level, a 7th grade reading and writing level, in the reality of the challenges in my home life, challenges I had in school, the challenges I have even doing this advocacy work across the country. Sometimes I think people think that one day they're going to wake up and these problems have gone away, and that's really not reality. And I think Kyle's life is a powerful, powerful example of just maximizing the reality of where you stand. And I think kids who are dealing with trauma and tremendous challenges, that speaks to them because that is their reality, that they're in tremendous pain. They have tremendous opposition. And instead of painting a picture that this is all going to go away one day, we show them this is how you can maximize the reality of where you're standing. And that's very, very empowering for these children. And then the last place resilience comes from is something called rock bottom resilience. And that's the ability to say to yourself, when you have every reason to give up, to shut down, you're able to say to yourself, how can I use this problem as my best friend? Because one thing we've learned in the world of resilience is until you ask yourself that question, how can I use this problem as my best friend? It's very difficult to bounce back. There's a mindset that we have found in the world of resilience that has to kick in. And that's when you're at your lowest point, you believe in your ability to change your circumstances and combat hopelessness and fight on. You put one foot in front of another when you have every reason to give up. Just give you a couple of examples. You refuse to be defined by the negative labels you've been given, whether by yourself or others. You're able to believe in potential unforeseen options. That's a big thing. If I didn't believe that something positive would come out of this day, it'd be very hard for me to get out of bed. But I have to constantly believe in the unforeseen. Some door will show up. I know in this work that we're doing in the beloved community is the unforeseen will show up, that this country will start paying attention to a lot of this work that's being done as we just believe in that unforeseen. We show up, we get the message out, some doors will open up. You take control of the present, knowing that losing in the past doesn't equal losing in the future. And what's interesting is everybody has their own personal rock bottom, and that's different for everyone. And I've done over 6,000 hours of family therapy. And one of the things I do in every therapy session, not in every session, but I'm working with a client over X amount of time, is my goal is to show them how to take the worst moment of their life and convert that into like a nuclear fuel rod of energy for the rest of their life. The ability to take that worst moment of our lives and say, I'm going to learn from that. If I made a mistake, I'm going to make amends, but I'm going to learn from that worst moment in my life, whether I hurt another person or someone hurt me. I'm going to use that as a reason to be a better mother, a better father, a better employer, a better employee, a better human being. I'm going to use that pain as a fuel source. And that's really what we're trying to emphasize there in rock bottom resilience. One day it hit me, I could learn more from a single mom living in a car with 3 kids than I could from my friend Covey or Anthony Robbins. By the time you have a helicopter, you ought to be resilient. And it hit me that that I wanted to know what is enabling a person in such a difficult situation. I would meet these people who would just keep pushing through and not giving up. And like, again, I would see the relational resilience come out. They would do it for their children. I would see their street resilience come out. They would use, the disrespect they felt as a reason not to give up. I would see them maximize the reality of the resources around them. And then I'd see their rock bottom resilience. They would just say to themselves, okay, this is the reality of my situation. How can I use this pain as fuel? And we would see this over and over again. And so once you understand these four sources of resilience and you start seeing anybody bounce back, you'll quickly go, oh my gosh, they're tapping into relational. They're tapping into street. I mean, we've literally now looked at tens of thousands of people who have overcome tremendous challenges. And literally, once you understand this within minutes, you can literally look at it and go, all right, there's their relational resilience. There's their street resilience. That's where they flip the switch. That's what they're doing with their negative emotions. And I believe one of the biggest social justice issues in the next 30 years is going to be millions and millions of children and families are going to get access to evidence-based resilience, and millions may not. And that's what I'm so excited about the work that Beloved Community is doing to hopefully to get resilience and some of this information to many of these children and family who are dealing with tremendous opposition and trauma as soon as possible. And so it's just an honor to be here with you all today and to share some of this work with you. And I want you to keep in mind, I know I went about 10 minutes over here, but to even do this presentation justice, oftentimes it takes about 90 minutes, an hour and a half to 2 hours to get into the depth of this. This is kind of a Reader's Digest version, but I hope this quick version of the four sources of where resilience comes from within makes sense this quick.
Christian, thank you so much. I'm going to open up the mics here for anyone who's on the call and on the webinar. We unfortunately lost Virgil. His computer had a problem, but he is listening as via the phone, but that means he unfortunately can't ask questions. Owen, I think your mic is open, so if you have any questions, please go ahead.
Christian, I don't know if you had the benefit of seeing Dr. Howard Stevenson's presentation on Friday, but he talked about the different aspects of success. And I was wondering how your work in resilience connects to Howard Stevenson's conversation about success.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to see that. Dang, I wish I would have saw that. I was speaking that day. But what were some of the themes? I'm curious. What were some of the?
Well, he indicated that success has very little to do with the the value of your bank account, but rather relationships, understanding of the roles that you have in your life, those various kinds of aspects.
And about how those roles lead to other, connections and stuff. I know just being a social worker has created a community around me and has enabled me to connect with many people. And I was just looking at some research that was showing, depending on what profession and what area in life you go into, the different avenues and doors and relationships that opens up to has a huge impact. I remember as a kid growing up there in Maryland, I lived in a neighborhood called Chapelgate. And I literally thought to myself as a child, I'll never, ever get out of this neighborhood. And I look back at that, I think that's crazy. I mean, none of my friends had cars or anything at that time. And as a child, looking at it from that perspective, I thought, man, I'll never get out of this community. I'll never even be able to transcend this neighborhood. And looking back at that now, I've been able to fly 3 million miles around this earth, but my perspective was so limited up until I was, almost 18 years old. Was so limited by the physical environment that I was in, and that's one of my big challenges when I'm working in lots of communities is to help children understand that that there's so many options in this country, and how do we paint a picture for them to be able to see that these options are truly are limitless. And that's I know Dr. Ford Fisher was talking about how some of these kids, you just don't see when you ask them, you know, what's your potential? What do you want to do? They truly don't see their potential. And I'm hoping that this resilience work, you know, helps lay some of that foundation for them to see that potential, that their ability to access community is so big. There's so many people that, and they don't have to do it by themselves. There's so many people that will be able to help them, that's, you know, something that's gonna, that's there for them. But if you don't believe that, it's so easy to hurt yourself, hurt other people, turn to the streets, to drugs, to violence, when you don't see that those options are there. And I think one of the things that the beloved community we have to really look at is, how do we paint that picture that, you know, Dr. Ford Fisher was alluding to, as soon as possible. And I think resilience can play a role there in what she was talking about there.
Thank you.
I'll just add that we did record the webinar, so you will be able to watch that, Christian, at some point in the future.
I'm excited. I'm really excited.
One of the things that that Dr. Stevenson spoke about was this notion of enjoying success. Is you should think about it as a journey of a lifetime. And I think some of the strategies you are sort of advocating and developing in your work will give people the skill set so that they can, you know, go forward on that journey. We had Owen did a really good webinar discussion presentation of his sort of GPS strategy, where again it has that journey, like a heroic journey metaphor, where you figure out where you are now. You can use the GPS, the spatial sort of analogy, to look at where you're going, and then you can chart your pathway there and monitor progress as you go. So I think all of the webinars that we have here all connect, and one of the things we'll do as we move forward with this initiative is to start focusing on that connectivity and deciding, you know, how to advance and how to combine these ideas. I think they're very, very powerful. I mean, just reflecting sort of personally on what we're doing here, you know, at some level we have this clear relational resilience aspect to the initiative, right? We have, you know, I wrote down here, your greatest motivation is to not give up. To not give up is that others depend on you. I think there is this feeling that we have something important here, and the others could be our colleagues within the initiative, but also others in our society. And you know, and we're sort of moving forward to try and advance this initiative to the benefit of everybody. And I think at this point we have this relational resilience building among the initiatives, and it seems maybe we'll move into the other dimensions of resilience as things unfold, but there's clear analogies here between your work and what I think we're trying to achieve and how we're operating.
That's exciting. That's exciting. I'm very excited. The need out there, you know, the last couple of days I was at a conference yesterday where they're trying to figure out, you know, how to open up higher education to more students with challenges and opposition in their background. And it was really interesting to just, a lot of the participants of this, they up front, they go, you know, we don't even reach out to some of those students. And we explained that, you know, what some of these students do on the back end. Up front, they may present like they don't have much to contribute. And we explained to them, you know, how much they already have contributed and their potential to contribute more. And it was just amazing to see lots of people change their view of these students that are struggling. And in a way, those struggles, we help them understand those struggles are why they'll be great, you know, doctors, they'll be great lawyers, great professors, they'll be great at what they do because of the struggle, not in spite of it, but because of the struggle. And it's interesting to the last few weeks to go into high academic communities and see that transition start to be emphasized. So I think there's some beautiful timing right now for the work of the beloved community.
Well, Christian, I think this will bring us to an end of this part of the webinar, and I'd like to thank you on behalf of all of us who are running this. Your time is greatly appreciated, and your insights here were excellent. And we've recorded this webinar, and so hopefully it will be available for others to view as a collective once we finish the summit that we're currently running. So thank you very much, and I look forward to future engagements.
Look forward as well. Thank you for everything. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Right.